Hello and hi, welcome to Halacha series number 2. We will be continuing with chapter 5, Laws of Cleanliness with regard to prayer. So, the Torah says, "Let thine camp be holy, that he see no unseemly thing in thee." Basically, the rabbis deduce from this verse that whenever one is engaged in a very holy task, one's body and surroundings must be clean. It follows, therefore, that before engaging in prayer, one must ensure that no need is felt to go to the restroom. Now, this happens a lot with us, because the fact is, we want to pray. However, it's not always so convenient based on our feeling, whether if we have to use a restroom or anything else. It also follows that it is forbidden to meditate on Torah while in the restroom or in the presence of excrement or urine. For further details, we're going to talk about this a little bit later. The whole point of this is that Torah itself is very sacred. The topic is very holy. You want to make sure to do everything with complete cleanliness, with complete holiness. Now, everything else, such as uncleanliness or not being hygienic or not being ritually pure, it hinders the ability of trying to bring yourself to a higher level. And that includes spiritually as well as physically. That's why you have to make sure to be as clean as possible. And that is why we have so many times we wash our hands after many things we do. Chapter number 6. Laws of suitability of surroundings for prayer. Halacha number 1. It is not permitted to pray while a woman or even a picture of a woman whose body is immodestly exposed is in view. The same applies to such pictures on television. The whole point over here is, once again, you want to do everything with purity. If your mind is traveling elsewhere, or it's beginning to think of inappropriate thoughts, a person really can't bring himself to pray with utmost concentration. You see, that's the main problem that we have over here. Halacha number 2. Similarly, one should not pray before an infant who is undressed. Why? Because over here you have to realize the infant that is undressed, it's very simple. Usually it's soiled. Or half the time the kid, that this kid needs to be dressed, needs to be taken care of. Again, this is ruining your thought pattern. Halacha number 3. One should not recite the Shema or pray in front of urine or excrement, even of that baby. For instance, many times is that, you do change your kid, you do change the child in one room, and the problem is that, what should I do? I want to start praying right now. However, there's a dirty diaper, there's this, there's that. So you want to make sure that wherever you pray, it's clean. Not just your thoughts, not just your vision, but also the clean from any type of dirt, any type of waste, or anything of the sort. Halacha number 4. The sight of a bedpan, even if empty, might be considered unsuitable at the time of prayers. But since such utensils are nowadays made of non-absorbent material, such as glazed china, plastic, metal, porcelain, their presence is permissible if they are clean and odorless. The point of this is, when a person, when he wants to pray, when he wants to do anything that is holy, he has to make sure it has to be clean and no traces of any waste can be in front of him. That means that I understand with sight, you don't see anything, but also with smell, and also with smell, and also with sight. Basically, you need both aspects in order for you to pray. In a case where a bedpan with its contents is in front of one, and it's not covered. Remember we talked about the case by a lady or by a man, he wants to pray, and he has a catheter that's connected to him. So the same thing over here. In a case where a bedpan with its contents is in front of one, and it is not properly covered, one may nevertheless pray if the bedpan is out of one's domain and is not visible. For instance, hospital beds, which stand higher than 10 amot, 10 handbreadths, approximately 80 centimeters, as he has over here. Remember, he's English, so everything's in the metric system. 80 centimeters is roughly about, you have 100 centimeters, which is about roughly a meter, which is about 3 feet. So 80 centimeters is like 2.5 feet. Others hold also about a meter. So if you have your bed, which is about 80 centimeters where you're sleeping from the floor, any place that you put on the ground, it's automatically a separate domain. So, in other words, what you can do is you can just place the bedpan under the bed and you can pray. You can say your tefillot, you can say your te'ilim, or whatever needs to be done. Oh, here's another halacha. If, let's say, a bedpan from a neighbor bed is visible, then it is advisable to draw the curtains. Once again, sight is very important. Halacha number 7. Yes? Okay. Chapter 7, actually. These are now, we're going to go into the laws of tzitzit. Tzitzit, as we talked about, I can give you a little introduction, quick introduction, to give you what is tzitzit. Let me read it for you. He says, with regards to the mitzvah of tzitzit, the Torah has this to say. The Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, speak to thy children of Israel, and bid them that they make them, throughout their generations, fringes in the corners of their garments, and that they put with the fringe of each corner a thread of blue. If you realize this is what we say in Shema. And it shall be unto you for a fringe, that you may look upon it, and remember all the commandments of the Lord, and do them, and that ye go not about after your own heart and your own eyes, after which you can go astray, that you can remember and do all my commandments and be holy unto your God. Basically, he's just saying in English the entire portion of Vayomer that we read every day in Shema. To fulfill this mitzvah, it is generally accepted that one should acquire 2 4-cornered garments with tzitzit. One is known as a talit katan, which is basically the one that we all wear under our garments, and one is a talit gadol. That is the one that we usually wear on top of our garments, like on Shabbat or in the morning when we pray. It's a big prayer shawl. The purpose of wearing the talit is self-explanatory from the text, in order that you may look upon it and remember all the commandments of the Lord and do them. The rabbis say, whoever is diligent in keeping this commandment will merit to behold the divine glory. The thread of blue referred to in the above is regarded by the rabbis as a symbolic reminder of God's presence, because the blue resembles the sea resembles the heavens, and the heavens resemble the throne of glory. That's a little introduction for tzitzit. So let's go into the laws of tzitzit. So he starts off halacha number 1. The precept of tzitzit is of great importance. As we just said before, the Torah associates it with 613 commandments, as it is said that you may look upon it and remember all of the commandments of the Lord. The rabbi stated that he who is particular about the mitzvah of tzitzit merits to receive the divine presence. That's why it's so important for such a simple and easy mitzvah of tzitzit that you can wear all day long. Halacha number 2. Prior to putting on of the talit, the following beracha must be said standing up. Basically, in the morning when you're holding your big talit, you want to make sure to say the beracha, Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'msudah v'tzivanu leitatef betzitzit. Now, halacha number 3. It is important that one should wrap the talit over one's head immediately after making the blessing, before placing it over the rest of one's body. The reason why this halacha is important is because every time we make a blessing, a bracha, we always have to have an action done immediately after the blessing. For instance, when you eat food, what do? You first make a bracha, then you eat it. When you do any mitzvah that you make a blessing, you make the blessing, and then you do the mitzvah immediately afterwards. So that's the same exact logical reasoning by tzitzit, to make sure as soon as you make the blessing, put the tzitzit on. Now, prior to reciting the blessing, this is halacha number 4, one has to ensure that the fringes of the talit are not torn, because if the fringes are torn or defective, one cannot make a beracha on the talit, because the talit is one complete unit. You need all the strings to be intact. You need every part of the tzitzit for the formula to be there. Let's go to halacha number 5. If the talit is defective, for example, if 2 threads of the fringes or more are torn, or if the talit itself is no longer in usable condition, one should dispose of it in a respectful manner. It is customary to place a worn-out talit in the ginizah for burial. Basically, when things of kedusha, things of holiness, have no more usage, we don't discard them the same way we discard everything else, like in the trash. Rather, we take this talit and we give it to someone. For instance, they go to the Chaver Kadisha, they go to the memorial, we go to the cemetery, and we bury. Sometimes they bury many people with the talit, so they give the talit with the person to bury him. That's just a side halacha. Halacha number 6. Although it is a mitzvah to wear the talit during prayer, it is nevertheless advisable to wear a talit katan beneath the shirt all day long. So basically a simple mitzvah, a couple of dollars, you can wear a talit katan under your shirt and you can get a mitzvah every second. It is customary not to make a blessing over the talit katan when one puts it on in the morning, but rather you wait until one makes the blessing of the talit gadol and have it in mind to include the talit katan also. Something very simple over here, and that is you have this talit katan that you want to make sure to say a blessing. Now, what you want to do is you want to make a blessing on this small little talit, but you know later on you're going to make a blessing on a big talit. So what do? You say nothing on the small talit. Rather, when you make the bracha on the big talit, you'll have in mind for the small talit. The whole point of this halacha is to tell you something very simple. You don't want to make more blessings than necessary. You do want to say brachot, it's so beautiful, but you don't have to do it more than necessary. So what we do over here is, again, we don't make a blessing on the small talit that we wear all day long, but rather when we wear the big one, we have in mind for the small one. Okay? Halacha number 8. One may not enter a toilet wearing a big talit gadol, but he may enter one wearing a small talit. The reason is because it's just like his clothing. The big one is not like his clothing. Halacha number 9. According to some Sephardi rabbis, one may not remove one's talit katan even at night. Some people, they're very pious. They like to wear it and enjoy every mitzvah, especially even at night. Halacha number 10. According to the Shulchan Aruch, if one removes one's talit with the intention of putting it on again, a blessing should be recited when this is done. Other authorities are of the opinion that no blessing should be said, and this is actually the halacha. According to this, one should not recite the blessing on the talit or the tefillin when replacing them after coming out of the restroom. Now this is important to know because a lot of times the talit gadol, we take it off, we go to the bathroom, we take it off, we have to take care of the kids, or whatever it may be. So when you take it off with the intention of putting it back on, then it's no problem. You don't have to make a blessing again. So if you take your talit or your tefillin off, don't worry about it. You could put it on without making a bracha. Halacha number 11. If one borrows a talit from one's friend in order to fulfill the mitzvah, one should recite the blessing. If, however, one borrows it merely on being called up to the Sefer Torah, no blessing should be said. In the event that the talit is the communal property of the synagogue, then even when one is called up to the Sefer Torah, a blessing should be recited on the talit. So once again, this halacha is basically, if you're borrowing a talit from someone, you do not need the bracha if you're doing it in order to make a birkat HaTorah, meaning they say Ya'amod Yehuda ben Binyamin. So Yehuda goes up and he makes a blessing on the Torah. He doesn't need to say the blessing on the talit if he borrowed the talit from his friend. But if he got the talit from the synagogue, then he does need to make the blessing. The difference is because by the synagogue, it's as if you own it. That's why it's very important to take care of the synagogue, because it's your house as well. But when you borrow it from a friend, you're not really owning it when you're saying a blessing for Sefer Torah, when you're making a blessing just for the Torah. The reason why you wear that talit while you're saying for a Sefer Torah is so you can be fully garbed, at least one pair of tzitzit. Halacha number 12. One may wear the talit or tefillin of one's friend without his knowledge, as it can be assumed that the owner would be pleased to allow the use of his property for the sake of another's fulfilling a mitzvah. Something very important is that normally if you don't see a person for the mitzvah of the talit the talit gadol and the tefillin, for the big talit and the tefillin, you could assume that he's going to let you use his talit and his tefillin. But if you know he's a person who's very, very, very particular about his stuff, better not to use it unless you ask him. Number 13, halacha number 13. Although it is written, Uritem oto, and you should see them, Nevertheless, a blind man is obliged to fulfill the mitzvah of talit because others can see his talit as well. Because remember, we say in Shema, uritem oto, uschartem. You should see them and remember. So you're saying the blind man, he can't see it. But we say, no, don't worry. It's not just the blind man, it's everyone else. Number 14. It is a mitzvah for the father to buy a talit for his son, even though he is under the age of bar mitzvah. This is a beautiful custom that we buy the kids that are under bar mitzvah a talit, because this will get them into the excitement mode in order to do a mitzvah, in order to put on the talit every day. Number 15. The mitzvah of talit and tefillin apply only by day and not by night. Consequently, as these positive commandments have a fixed time, women are exempted from fulfilling them. It follows, therefore, that if a talit is put on at night, no blessing can be said. So quickly, basically, the talit and tefillin are only a daytime mitzvah, and anytime there's a mitzvah that's dependent on time, women are not obligated to partake of that mitzvah, because if everything's going to be based on fixed time, then a woman who has to take care of the kids, who is the bayit, who is the home, where you see every successful home has a successful mother, a successful wife. As many times in the Talmud, it talks about how important the mothers are, and the future of the Klal, or the future of the Jewish nation, are in the hands of the Jewish mothers. So you can see that right away how important the mothers are, how important the wives are, that they give that courage, they give that strength, that support to the fathers, to the sons, in order to learn Torah, in order to continue the faith. You see how important they are now. If they're going to be doing so many things, it's going to be very hard for them. They're going to feel bad that they couldn't wear the talit or they couldn't wear the tefillin. So therefore, they're not obligated. Not that the fact that they're not important, that makes absolutely no sense. I have no idea who brought that up. But rather, the fact is that everyone has their own set time to do different mitzvot. Halacha number 16. On wearing a new talit for the first time, in addition to the blessing of the talit, following blessing should be added. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam shechianu v'kiyimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Basically, if somebody gets a new talit, a big talit, it's like a new garment, and he should be very happy for it, and he should say the famous blessing of Shechianu, blessed art thou, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has kept us alive, sustained us, and enabled us to reach this season. Basically, thank God that I'm alive, that I am able to enjoy my new talit, my new home, my new car, my new this, my new that, anything. That we'll talk about the halachot of Shechianu a little bit later, but I'll tell you, anytime that we do a wedding and it's at nighttime, these two halachot apply. That the chatan, the groom, does not say the blessing over the talit because it's nighttime, but he does say the blessing of Shechianu. So you see how important it is in order to just have these simple brachot always at hand, because you always want to make sure that you say the right thing at the right time. This concludes Halacha series number 2, and God willing, we'll start off with laws of tefillin tomorrow.